The Duppies on Donkey's Hill, narrated by L. Patricia Virgo.
My name is Martha Turbay, and I live with my parents on Acre Street in Porus, Manchester, Jamaica. My father, John, was a butcher at the Porus market, but he was not a well man, suffering with a bad chest. Mother Jane stayed at home as a housewife to look after Anne, Dora, Lena, Jenny, John, and myself. At the age of 17, I was a higgler, and I traveled every day to Mandeville Market to sell fruit and farm produce. This particular time, I arrived home late from a long day to find that Mother had already cooked. Everyone had eaten, but nothing was left for me. Mother was like that. Papa was very upset about my misfortune, but Mama ruled the roost. So all he could do was to sympathize with me, then send me out to tend the donkey, which my sisters were too ladylike to do. I can well remember the fuss I made, but eventually it was easier to go than to make a useless commotion. The donkey was tethered to graze some distance away, down the hill from the house, across the gully, then up another hill until we came to the wall surrounding our field. I had grumbled my way down to the gully, crossed over and was starting to climb when a sound froze me in my tracks. I stood quite fixed to the spot as my eyes and ears strained into the dark night for a clue as to the cause. Slowly the night air gave up a sound, the sobbing of a baby, distant at first, but coming closer. I wonder who left this picnic out here so late. I searched around as best as I could in the darkness, but no sign of a baby. Hush, hush, hush. The gentle cooing of a mother whispering to soothe her child drifted down the hill towards me. So I pressed on, expecting to meet up with another mother and child crossing our land. I called out, "Oh, who that?" But no reply. Reaching the donkey, I busied myself, talking to the creature and moving its tether to better grazing. As I climbed the hill back to the house, the baby's crying started again with a vengeance, a pitiful entreaty coming seemingly from everywhere. Then something came bumping down the hill. Two ball-shaped objects were rolling towards me, and I only just managed to avoid them, jumping to one side as they shot past and careered into the gully. To my horror, I realized that the balls were in fact the heads of two large infants, uttering most mournful cries of anguish. They were followed by the running specter of a woman calling after them, "Hush, hush, hush," but they only continued to scream and wail until they passed out of my sight and hearing. A lady in the district had recently died during the delivery of twins, both of whom died with the mother. My legs hardly carrying me home, I burst sobbing into the kitchen where Mother Jane stood cleaning the pots of the day. Flinging my arms around her, I stuttered and stammered to tell of my fearful experience, at which she began to shout and curse. Then pushing me away, she ran into the yard, shouting and cussing all around the house. I was told that this was to keep the duppy at bay. "Tara, Tara, Tara!" I fell into a swoon and could not recall anything for the next 3 days. Papa telling me later that my fear had thrown me into a fit, with locked jaw and foaming at the mouth. Father had treated me by boiling up cobwebs, feeding the juice to me with a spoon, but it was many days before I returned to my normal self. Some months later, returning home from the market, I was promptly asked to tend our donkey. In view of my previous experience, I was more reluctant than ever to go, but I began this worrying trip, creeping down to the gully with great trepidation, furtively listening and watching for anything untoward. All went well until I approached the perimeter of the donkey's field, when a glow in the darkness attracted my attention. Crouching down, I quickly advanced to discern a fire on top of the wall. Over the fire was a large iron pot, and stirring its contents was the figure of a man I recognized as Chuku. Now Chuku had been an odd job man who plied his trade in the local community. But he had lied, I'm sorry. He had died of pneumonia some months back around the time that the lady and her twins had passed over. My heart beat as if it would burst. Sweat formed in large beads on my forehead, and the palms of my hands became clammy and shook uncontrollably. I dropped to the ground, anxious not to be seen, and watched this ghostly play unfold. From the other side of the wall, a lady appeared, carrying two pitneys in her arms. Placing her babies on the wall, she climbed up beside them, retrieved her young ones, and placed one on each breast to feed. Chuku smiled and ladled out the stew. The smell of duppy must have wafted over to my nostrils as I lay shaking on the ground. Pulling myself together, I edged backward to crawl the halfway down the hill, where I sprang up like fire, never looking back until I reached the safety of our yard. Mama and Papa listened yet again as I told my unbelievable story. But once more, before I could finish, Mother Jane was stamping around the house, shouting and cussing enough to arouse the whole district. The poor donkey was not moved that night, and when Papa went to tend it, in daylight of course, the poor creature had grown a film over both eyes. Until his dying day, John blamed the Duppies for this affliction to his animal. I survived, but never went onto the donkey's hill again at night.